brand new season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
Now here we go.
What? Oh, I did it again. I did this on the baseball episode last week where I had already brought in the co-host, but that's okay because that'll save us time. So the softball guru is already here. But first off, welcome in everybody to episode 78 of Arkansas Preps Weekly on the Natural State Sports Network. I'm Kyle Sutherland, and coming in a little bit sooner than expected, the softball guru, Jared Hawthorn. Yeah, as I said there at the top, I did that last week where Cabo and I were socializing a little bit, Jared, like you and I just were, and then I forgot to put him back in the green room, but I guess that really doesn't matter because I guess in the previous episodes, we've, like in past years, we've normally just had us both on before I introduced you. So we'll just go back to the format that we did here as we wrap up the final two episodes because the 2025 season did conclude with the crowning of 6 state champions at the University of Central Arkansas at Shock Stadium. During the weekend of champions, we crowned, of course, soccer and baseball champions as well. Jared, it wasn't quite as crazy on our side as it was baseball. Kevin and I are going to have a lot of things to discuss with everything that went down on the baseball side between a historic game, the longest state championship game in baseball history, prep baseball history, on top of having to get some moved to this week, just a whole crazy deal there. But overall, not a whole lot of craziness on our side. Yeah, there was some things maybe that we didn't expect. But for the most part, I would say that it went about just like we expected. So we'll break down all that here in a second. Also got to give a shout out to our Ladyback. Well, it's not even the Ladybacks anymore. They just go by the Razorbacks. But the softball team, Courtney Deifel and co., their season unfortunately came to a close. Their drought continues from the Women's College World Series, but got a lot done this year, broke some individual and team records along the way. So repping the flagship program this week.
Yeah, after I learned that they went down in the last game yesterday, we were playing, so I didn't get to watch it live. But when I learned that they went down, I was like, yeah, I'm going to have to rep the Razorbacks to give them a little love. Courtney Deifel's an amazing coach, and the program has been just stellar for, several years now, 5, 6, 7 years. They're really, really building and continue to just stack talent. I hear a lot of people talking about, well, we can't get to the College World Series and we're cursed. We can't get out of regionals or super regionals. Hey, listen, look at what this program has done and what it continues to do and the kind of talent we bring in and being ranked in the top 5 or 6 teams year after year after year now. Hey, you can't ask for anything better than that. If you got a problem with that, then you need to go somewhere else and go be a fan of somebody else, because I love what the Hogs are doing, and they're going to break through, and maybe we'll get a College World Series or even a Natty here in the next year or two.
Well, and the fact that I don't know about you, Jared, but I've had both the stomach virus and food poisoning more than once, and I can't function for about 2 or 3 days. And Peyton Burnham comes out, and Robin did some good things too. It was definitely obvious that she was not herself, but Peyton Burnham comes in after all that she basically, and Courtney Deifel kind of jokingly said in the post-game press conference, like she was on her deathbed and couldn't hardly function, and then comes out and throws a shutout against the really hot Ole Miss team that obviously is in their first women's college World Series ever. So yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that we kind of have gotten it. It's one thing. I like the fact that there is expectations. I do appreciate the fact that fans care, but I think that we get too caught up in this happened this season or that season, and it's just we don't really focus on this year and all the good that came with it. I mean, what was it? 5 series that they won against top 10 teams. 3 of them were on the road.
Yeah, what they did during the regular season and even into the SEC tournament was just, they were really outstanding. Winning on the road like they did this year just doesn't happen in the SEC. Yeah. Even the top 2-3 teams in the country were not doing what they did, winning on the road, winning series on the road. They have great players up there. They're not losing a ton of those great players. A couple for sure, big names that are gonna be sorely missed without a doubt. But there's so much talent still there, so much more talent coming in. I expect them to still be just pushing, for playing for those top 3, 4, 5 spots in the country for the next 5, 6 years.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, you're going to lose Bree Ellis and a couple other key ones, but got more coming in and more coming back. So excited for our Ladybacks to continue. I keep saying Ladybacks like that's not what they go by anymore. Our softball Razorbacks, love to see that continuous improvement. I mean, even though, like we said, it hasn't reaped the reward of a Women's College World Series yet, you still see that improvement every year, whether it's bringing more big-time players in, continuous 40-plus win seasons, all those good things. So, well, before we get into the conversation of recapping all the state championships, let's give some love to the people who make this show possible, starting with Athletic Field Service of Arkansas, whether infield renovation, lip removal, edging, all that and much more on a natural surface, any natural surface. Call our guy, Jeremy Rice, at 501-416-1218. That's 501-416-1218. Also, Boom Boom Floor Shine, servicing all of Southwest Arkansas. You need some TLC for your VCT, give them a call today at 870-833-0521. And last but not least, Chinook Cedary. Head over to ChinookCedary.com. Check out all 8 flavors that they have. I prefer the Smokehouse Barbecue or the Jalapeno Ranch. Those are my top 2 go-tos. D1 softball, D1 baseball, USA softball. That is the preferred seed for all of them, so it should be yours too. Type in NSS Media for your referral code. Get 10% off your order. All right, let's get into it. Bentonville 4, Springdale Harbor 3. Want to start off congratulating my man Kent Early. He is a 7-time state champion in his career now, Jared. That now set the record for all time for a single coach. His assistant, Lindsey Davis, has 10 rings. I believe those are combined with golf and softball, maybe a couple other sports mixed in, but a lot of success on the coaching staff there, a lot of success within this program. And we knew that this was, again, anytime these two teams meet, I know that Bentonville won 4-0 and 7-1 in the regular season matchups. And of course they won this game 1-0 in the state final last year. But I mean, Harbor gave them all that they wanted, and there's really no team that knows Bentonville better than Harbor. You look at it, Jared, the Wildcats actually put the first run on the board, and then a 2-run double at the bottom of the first inning. They answered that, ended up getting the Bentonville Tigers the lead, and then a big time 2-run double in the bottom of the third. Of course, that was Ava Stymus, that normally is a pinch. She'll usually come like that 6-7 hole, kind of towards the back end of the lineup, and she's been really solid as a pinch hitter. Coach Early loved the matchup that he saw. I guess I can say it now, but he and I talked about it when we were discussing the game going into this weekend. Said that's probably one of the changes that we're going to make, is we're going to put her in that 7 hole. We just kind of feel like the way she's playing right now, that's a good decision. But a really good pitching duel. There was, I think probably both pitchers would tell you that this was not their best game. But look, Sierra Dotts, Darby Burnett, who Darby ended up getting the MVP of the game, 7 innings. Of course, both of them went the distance. Darby gave up 2 hits, 3 runs. Of course, one of those 3 runs. Only one of those earned, 13 strikeouts. And probably the glaring one was the 9 walks. And you look at that, Jared, and that definitely was something that Harbor was able to exploit and take advantage of. But then I also think you look at the rest of Darby's line, and that just kind of shows what a competitor she is, why Texas A&M wants her, and that's what she's going there. Is a P4, had other P4 offers, and that kind of embodies to me just watching this game and also just looking at Darby's line. That's a perfect example of being a pitcher that you just have to worry about the next pitch. You can't worry about the good thing, the strikeout that you just got, the one before, and then the next one you walk somebody. You can't think about too high or too low. You just got to keep throwing. And I thought that was what she embodied in the circle, and Bentonville got some timely hits when they really needed them.
That was mine. I didn't get to watch that game live. And when I very first went back and looked at the box score, I saw that 9 walks, and I was like, whoa, And then I went back and I looked at plays and a few things. And that was the one thing that stood out to me. And I don't know any of the coaches' mindsets or what their game plan was, but I believe, looking at it, that Harbor went to the game, went to the boxes with a mindset of we're going to make her throw something that we can hit, or we're going to take a walk. To me, it looked like they were looking to take advantage of. She's always been a pitcher, in my opinion, that uses the very corners of the plate. She doesn't throw stuff over the middle of the plate. She's going to use her edges. She's going to use her movement. She's going to do all the things that she can do to get hitters to chase. And Harbor had a approach in the box of we're going to make her throw us a pitch before we try to drive something. And it almost worked out in their favor because they got the 9 walks out of the deal. And really, honestly, to me, the only thing that Harbor was missing was that one key hit. One key hit because they left runners stranded several times, runners in scoring position several times. That one key hit was the difference in Harbor being able to have a chance to win this game.
No doubt about it. I think that's really a good point about how just really trying to get on base more than anything, and that's what they did. They got on base, and there was a lot of times where both pitchers were in jams with 2 in scoring position, whatever the case may be. But you look at, of course, the response too, and I think that's what Bentonville has shown all year. They had that really rough weekend in Central Arkansas a couple weeks ago where they lost to Bologna, lost to Benton, and escaped that matchup with Sheridan. But other than that, that's one thing that we have seen. And you look at the Melissa game. I know that was a loss too, but they went into that one bottom of the 7th, 5-1, and were a swing away from walking it off. Ended up losing 5-3. They scored 2 in the bottom of the 7th and had bases loaded there at the end. And so I think that's one thing that you just know, and that's obvious with a team that's been successful and won as many ball games as they have really just thinking about the last decade in particular. That is the sign of a great team, one that can respond, because you got Harbor plated that run in the first, and then you got the 2-run double by Aniston Wright. And then 2 innings later, you got the 2-run double from Ava Stymus, which, and not to say, if we were talking about too early predictions for next year, I would say that Ava will likely take over for Aniston at first base since Aniston's about to head to Drake. But it was really just a matchup of 2 heavyweights that we knew was going to be a low scoring game. We had talked about last week that we could probably see it being another 1-0, 2-1 type, and ended up being 4-3. But, again, just really 2 heavyweights going at each other. Like I said, I think that if you talk to CC Dots, you talk to Darby Burnett, they tell you, we've had better games where we pitched. But the thing is they both kept their teams in the game, and they had some pretty good defense behind both of them as well. As I said, there were some blunders, but I think really once both teams settled in, it kind of just got better and better in that regard.
Well, I think the biggest thing that struck me when it came to the pitching is like the nerves of steel. They didn't stop, they didn't quit, they didn't get rattled. Even when they both of them got in jams, they were in jams multiple times, both pitchers. Neither of them flinched when they were in jams. They just kept throwing. They kept doing their deal, and they gave their team a chance to play defense behind them and make plays. And that's the sign of a truly impressive pitcher, is that instead of when they get in a jam or they walk that 1 or 2 or whatever happens, they don't flinch. They don't let it get to them. They don't let it continue to, you see that they have that mental toughness that you need to be able to be a great pitcher. Because a lot of times you see this, especially in high school and even some in travel, you see these players that just, they get 1 or 2 walks or give up a hit or a walk in the same inning, and man, they just mentally they implode. Well, that's not these 2 pitchers. Dots and Burnett both were just, in my opinion, just non-flinching, ready to go. Whatever happens, we're going to make the next play. They have that next play mentality and that mental toughness, and they showed it in this game.
No question about it. And I'll tell you, neither one of these were our top 2 teams all year in 6A, and proved that. Both of them obviously proved it all year. And just looking into next year, I know that Harbor's still going to have a good bit coming back. Of course, they'll have CC Dots back. And Jared, I think it's safe to say that Bentonville's not going to go anywhere just because they're not losing a whole lot. But I guess now it's public knowledge. I can say it. They're also gaining Daylon Osborne. It's in her Twitter profile and everything now. Daylon, of course, had a phenomenal season with Rogers. And so you're going to have Darby Burnett and Daylon Osborne in the circle for Bentonville next year. So, get your popcorn ready because I would imagine that schedule might even be more loaded next year with having two arms like that, two P4 type arms in your arsenal there. So not that we would expect Bentonville to go anywhere in particular. And again, I think Harbor's going to be right up there. I mean, they'll be, of course, I will not have be doing rankings this time or next year during the season. Of course, as I've said, this is my last year. We'll have more on that later, but it's pretty safe to say that these are probably your top two teams going into next year, with some respect to Brian as well. And that's way too far off. But good luck against Bentonville next year, having to face those two.
Well, that's without a doubt the thing that I was going to say about that with Dalen coming over there. That's going to allow Bentonville to continue to load that schedule like they did this year, but they're going to do it probably even more so next year. Two amazing arms, two super talented kids in the circle. They're already loaded with hitters and defense and everything else, and then the rich get richer on this one. So it's going to be a really good deal as far as Bentonville's concerned. They're gonna have huge rewards in that regard. I was impressed with Osborne all year long. Couldn't say enough good things about her. And now moving over in the Bentonville program, Bentonville's going to be really, really tough.
Yeah. And heading on down to 5A, I don't know, Jared, necessarily. This is one of those that I don't know that necessarily anybody was surprised by the result, just more so because Benton has been, as I've said before, the most complete team all year, but probably more so just the deficit. And really the biggest thing here, because Rexy Crane, an MVP performance, I mean, she did a great job. Peyton Stewart did an incredible job at catching behind her. Rexy went the distance, gave up 10 hits, 3 earned runs, walked 1, and then struck out 4. So Sheridan was obviously getting bad on the ball and all those things, but the key was they walked 8 Benton batters. And when you get, not only was that Sheridan's MO throughout the state tournament, was in the circle just because they had not allowed an earned run. They had allowed 1 run in the 3 games in the state tournament. They had that shutout against Searcy, and then allowed it was the unearned run against Bologna, and then shut out BB 3-0. So that had really kind of been their MO in at least 2 low scoring games. Not the Searcy game, they took care of business on both sides, but getting 8 Benton batters for 8 free pay, getting 8 Benton batters free passes. That is just not, a great recipe, mainly because they're so disciplined on the bags and their speed. I mean, that's not a good recipe regardless of who you're playing, but I think that was really just the turning point in the game, was the 8 walks and just not really being able to hit the spots like they had been doing. But you also, man, I mean, I want to also too, before we really dig in a little more, you got to give credit to the Sheridan team, because I don't think that even though they were in the outside looking in and taken out of the rankings, I don't think that we ever gave up on them by any means, but you were really questioning, were they going to be able to make a run? And, Chloe Clark stepped up, Cooper Terry stepped up, and there was, from those injuries, especially, that kind of both of them had really just kind of had lingering, and they did it. They proved a lot of people wrong. I mean, again, it's not like I gave up on them, but I wouldn't have predicted before the state tournament began that's probably where they would have finished. But just a gritty group. That senior class, that was the first one that were freshmen when Coach Hoffman got there. And they went semis, quarters, state champs, state runner-up. So just a great performance throughout the season here, and obviously 2 legendary teams, especially legendary teams over the past decade, that have set the standard for Class 5A. But this one belonged to the Benton Panthers, and this is their 4th state championship in 5 years. And talking about a team that's not going to go anywhere next year, they lose Lydia Betherts, their leadoff at short. That's obviously a massive part of this team, but they bring everybody back.
Well, I definitely did not see, before the state tournament, I did not see Sheridan playing for the state championship this year. I thought they were going to be quarterfinals, maybe semifinals, but I didn't think they had enough in the tank to get to the championship. So I will take it on the chin on that one and say ahead of time, I didn't think it was going to quite happen. They're a really good team, and I knew they were going to get close. I just didn't know if they were going to be healthy enough to get there. but they made a good run there and looked really good. And I'll be honest with you, watching that game, the thing that struck me a little bit, and you were talking about the 8 walks that they issued to Benton batters. I'm going to say, I think 5, maybe 6 of those were legitimate walks, but they got squeezed a little bit on a couple of those walks too, because there were several of those pitches on the outside corner from the Sheridan pitchers that should have been called strikes. I was watching that and I was like, man, how do you not give them that pitch? When you're tracing the black with the ball, that's got to be a strike. You're touching the black. I understand if you don't want to give the river. I understand if you don't want to give the other white line, things like that. But there were several of those that I was watching that were tracing the black and they weren't getting them. But outside of that, Benton did a great job. I mean, Benton played an amazing game. I don't think it would have changed anything in the outcome of this game, even if Sheridan got 2 or 3 of those calls there on strike threes. But Benton was extremely talented this year. Looked the part of a state champion. We looked at, and talked about them multiple times going into it, that it looked like it was going to be tough for anybody to beat Benton, and they proved that in the state championship game. Rexy Crane was amazing. And Rexy Crane, the one thing I will say about the strike zone is Rexy, I noticed, adjusted where she was throwing the ball a little bit, even when she didn't get a call or 2 early in counts. I saw that she adjusted her pitches a little bit and let her defense work behind her. And that's something that, you've got to be able to do, is if you're used to throwing a ball on that outside corner, barely tracing the plate and things like that, if you're not getting that call, you got to be able to make that adjustment. And that was the one thing that Rexy did a great job of, is she would, if she didn't get a pitch early in the count, she would adjust before she got in a bad spot on that batter. And her defense worked well. Their bats were amazing for Benton. So I was very impressed with Rexy Crane, and I have been for 2 years now. And I was really, really impressed with the Benton bats. There was just a lot of great hitters in that. They just kept putting the bat on the ball.
Yeah. Peyton Stewart, like I said, was great behind the plate. She had 2 doubles. She was 2 for 3. Both of those were doubles. Lakin Griffin, KB Moix. We talked about KB Moix, the fabulous freshman, I'll call her, one of the best freshmen in the state. I wholeheartedly believe they each had multiple hits. And then you look at the Sheridan side, and Skylar Starrett and say, both of the Starrett sisters, they're always a problem for people. And, Skylar was 1 for 3, but she had 4 stolen bags. And I know that she's probably going to obliterate the stolen bases record, the state record, before she leaves Sheridan and heads to Arkansas. Jaden Ashcraft, that had a big postseason last year, she went out with a bang, at least individually, getting multiple hits. So, yeah, I mean, Sheridan definitely, they got bat on the ball, they got on base, they got their hits, all those things. But I think really is just kind of back to my original point. I mean, that's what it was, really, just being able to get for Benton to get on the base pass and then able to execute from there. And how about too? I just can't, I know that you got to give the credit to Chloe Bradley for coming in and hitting the home run, but also just a great coaching move right there. They saw a great matchup right there. They brought her in to pinch hit, and then she hits, I think it was actually I can't remember if it was a solo or a 2-run homer, but man, that was, the game was for the most part already in hand by then, but that was just really big right there, because for her to come in that kind of moment on the biggest stage in the state to do that. And you saw the smile on Coach Chris Murphy's face, their assistant coach, they always coaching first base, and handles their hitting, all those things, calls pitches too. And that was just a really cool moment, I thought, for Chloe to be able to come in and her number was called. That's another reason that Benton has been able to do what it has done, is these kids, when their numbers are called, they produce. And that's exactly what she did. She had been cheering for most of the game, cheering on her teammates that had done a really good job. And then she comes in when her number's called, she makes the play.
Yeah, I think, as you said, the coaching job there and looking at that matchup, it was in a spot where they knew that they were going to have to throw to her. They weren't going to be able to pitch around her, and Chloe's always been a really strong hitter. We've seen her several times in travel ball and things like that. And, she's been an outstanding hitter for as long as I've known her. And, Chris Murphy, he said, I don't know, I didn't get to talk to him, but I wanted to ask him about that, is what had you been seeing ahead of time to know you wanted to insert her in that spot when you got that chance? So and I'm sure she'd been driving the ball in practice and being prepared and being ready and just staying sharp. And they got that option there in a spot where they had to throw her the ball. They couldn't avoid her. They had to put the ball somewhere over the plate, and it was a great moment for her. I was somewhat happy to see her go get that chance and to get that done in a spot where she could come up big. I'll tell you the other thing that I was going to mention a minute ago, and I didn't. You brought up Peyton Stewart, and man, I'll tell you what, the job she did behind the plate was just outstanding. I was watching some of her blocks and some of her framing and things that I was just so thoroughly impressed with the job that she did behind the plate on the defensive side. And then she hit the ball really well in that game. There was two different times that I thought, man, this may be the difference in Benton breaking this game open. One of them was when Peyton was hitting, and the other one was, I believe, when AC Lackey was hitting. They came up with big hits and big spots to help put runs on the board. And both those when it happened while I was watching the game, I was like, man, a hit here may be the difference in really opening this game up. And both times I thought that's exactly what happened. Was Peyton came up with a big hit and AC came up with a big hit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so, yeah, what did I say? That was 4 and 5 years for Bent, because they went 3-peat 21 through 23, and then this year, and then of course Sheridan. I mean, this is our last, as it was talked about last week on here, and really just throughout the week during the broadcast. This was your last 9 state champions. Of course, 2020, nobody played past, mid-March or whatever, so we didn't crown any champions that year. But just another phenomenal performance by this Benton team that is certainly a dynasty. And Sheridan is a dynasty in its own right too, having won 5 since 2016. So, yeah, wouldn't be shocked to see both of these teams in this position again next year. We'll see what happens, but. Class 4A, Pea Ridge, they got over the hump, Jared. They got their first state title in school history. That was their 4th appearance in 5 years and came up short. Look at last year. I think we talked probably ad nauseum about how last year Pea Ridge goes into the bottom of the 7th, down 6-0. They put a 5 spot up, and then they end up losing the game 6-5. And I had asked Coach Reynolds, that was one of the first things I asked him when I was talking to him about this game, was just, is it anything or is there anything from last season, particularly the state final, that you bring up to your team? Not necessarily to live in the past or anything, but just kind of like, hey, we showed that as long as we keep fighting, that anything can happen. And his response was they hadn't even really talked about it. He hadn't brought it up, and the kids haven't either. They're just really just focusing on themselves and doing what they have to do, and that's exactly what they did in this one. Really, from the beginning, it was a 6-0 game, but they left a lot on base. It didn't matter. I think by the 6th inning, Pea Ridge had left about 9 on base, but they had already done the damage by that point. So, I mean, I say that to say it probably could have been a bigger deficit, but you really have to credit Bauxite for the run that they made, because we're talking about Sheridan a second ago. Many didn't expect them to make a run to the 5A title. Kind of the same thing with Bauxite. We knew that the talent was there, but they had hit a bit of a slump, and then they really got hot. I think in the regional tournament, they had outscored opponents like 45-14 was the stat. But Emory Bolin had possibly, Jared, the best overall performance of anybody in all of the state championships, all 6 of them. She was up there. MVP performance, 7 innings, 3 hits, 1 walk, 12 strikeouts, and then also went 2 for 4. One of those was a 2 RBI double. The other was a 2-run bomb. So another one I was really impressed with, Lexi Vigil, that had maybe the best catch of the way. I mean, probably the best catch of the weekend, one of the better catches of the year in left field. I mean, it was a web gem. It shook her up a little bit. I'd probably knocked the breath out of her. She actually had to come out. She got a hit on the ensuing at bat right after they had gotten out of that frame. But she had to have a pinch runner come in just to kind of keep regrouping herself, and then returned, ended up playing the rest of the game. But Haley Wiley, I know, had another solid game. I know she had one of the RBIs, at least just off the top of my head. But really, for the most part, that game was won, Jared, in the first inning. They put a 6 spot up, or a 4 spot, did Pea Ridge, and then Emory hit that 2-run bomb to make it 6-0 for the final score. But I think really it doesn't matter whether it was Bauxite or Gosnell, who were the other teams, Monticello in front of them on this stage. I just don't think anybody was going to stop P Ridge right now. And I know that Monticello played them to a 1-0 game, so not taking anything away from them in particular, but just talking about this stage in particular, being back in the state final with all the heartbreak that many of those kids had tasted. I just don't think that anybody was going to beat P Ridge that day.
I'm not sure if you'd have put the Razorbacks in front of P Ridge that day, they were going to get the win. I mean, if I just feel like Emory Bolin decided she was not going to be denied a state championship this year, and she just went into Superman mode or beast mode or something because. Of course, she was real close to that last year. I mean, I don't know if you remember, she just missed a home run last year.
Oh, yeah. I was calling it. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Just missed a home run last year. And so I haven't got a chance to talk to Emory, but I'm going to. And I'm going to say, hey, you probably hit the gym a little extra in the offseason this year to be ready to put that ball on over the fence, right? She made sure she got one cleared of the fence this time around, and it definitely helped set the tone besides the way that she threw the ball. I mean, we've talked about her, for 4 years. She's been an amazing pitcher. She's a great kid. She's, even a beast with a bat in her hands. She's just a hard-working kid that good things have come to those who worked hard for it. She has just thrown the ball so very well. She battled some health stuff this year, and it knocked her out of a couple of games and really kind of, I would say, made her very determined as she came back from missing a few games, that she was going to put her head down and she was going to work really hard and she was going to do what it took to get her team there. And it is the team effort. It's not all about Emory Bolin. I understand absolutely. P Ridge is a loaded team. And Emory is the very visual point and captain of that team as far as, leadership and just going and doing the job. But I can't say enough good things about her and how well that she has carried herself, her character, and just really thrown the ball as well as anybody in the state over the last 4 years.
Yeah, no question about it. And talking about the rest of the team, it was 13 total hits. Hope Conkler and Haley Wiley both were 2 for 4. Mackenzie Whalen had a huge day, 3 for 4. And talking about how, yes, it is a team game. It's certainly not all about one person. And Emory would be the first person to tell you that. But I think really it was perfect at the end. And I said this on the broadcast right after she got that final strikeout. You didn't see, you saw a smile on her face, but you didn't see a whole lot of emotion. And if any kid that is playing high school softball in Arkansas right now had the right, for lack of a better term, to hoop and holler, jump up and down, it's her for being there for the 3rd straight year, coming up short the previous 2. But her teammates all sworn. It was almost like she was a magnet for her teammates. That's kind of what it looked like. And they all were jumping around because they understand not just how important she was with what she does with her arm and her bat, but also her leadership. That's something that really said a lot to me right there, was how they all came up to her and rallied around her. But yeah, just a complete performance all across the board, especially having 3 kids with multiple hits, and then Mackenzie Whalen leading the way there, 3 for 4.
Well, that what you call being a magnet, the way that team responded to her after that, without a doubt. It just shows everything that she's meant to this program and how they feel about her. And, that's without a doubt. Those kids on that team, they look to her for leadership, but they also, better than any of us, know what she had been through with health and different things going on this year, and what she's battled, and knowing how she responded, and she came back and she was just going to be dominant from that point forward, was that, they know what she went through and all the things that happened. And they were like, yeah, you came and did the job that we needed you to do, and you deserve everything you get right here. And that's when a team is built the right way around. And yes, she's kind of the focal point and what we talk about a lot. But there's so much that goes into that team chemistry And when you have a leader that everybody on that team respects and they gravitate to and that they love and they want to work hard. When you have a team leader, when you have a player leader like that, everybody around it responds and they want to work for her, especially being in the circle. They want to have her back. They want to make those great plays in the field and they want to go to the plate and have good approaches and hit the ball. They just do everything it takes to do what they need to do as a team and to support their pitcher. And I was just really, really impressed with Pea Ridge this year from the word go early in the year all the way through. They've been a great team for all 4 years we've been covering them. But this year there was something different about them, and it was just I thought they had what it took really early in the year, and it just continued to keep looking that way.
Yeah, they've been our number one team, like other than when Farmington won, like in the final poll last year. Pretty sure Pea Ridge has been our number one 4A team dating back to the beginning of the 24 season. So, yeah, just an incredible performance all across the board. But speaking of incredible performances, I know that we didn't get to see this one on. I didn't call the lower classes. I called 4 through 6, so I didn't get to see this 3A game either. As we know, there was a historic, the one that I mentioned at the top of the show between Brookland and Harding Academy went 14 innings in the baseball game. Well, I understand there were a lot of frustrated folks out there. I get it, but that is standard protocol to finish especially if we're in the position that we were, because this was a extra inning game on the brink of history. Obviously, it wasn't history at that point yet, but the softball game in 3A, Harding Academy plates the first run in the top of the first, and then Mayflower responds with 8. They got 1 in the bottom of the frame, and then they put a 7 spot up in the second. And so, that was part of it as well, was that you had the extra inning baseball game and then this game that was this out of reach by that point. And, Jared, we want to make sure and give plenty of due credit to even the teams that came up short on this, all of them, because these were the teams that we're talking about were the final 2 teams left in their classifications. And Harding Academy had a great year, maybe we were high on them at the beginning of the season, but I'd say they overachieved. We kind of figured that it would be like Mayflower, Lincoln, DeWitt, at the beginning of the season. That's kind of what we initially thought. And I think Harding Academy was somewhere in that 5-6 range that we had them. So we were high on them, but they just proved what they could do throughout the entire year. But so really got to give a lot of credit to them. Young team, they're going to have a lot coming back, but you just flip the page over to this Mayflower squad, and we've said all year they played the toughest. I mean, you just look up and down their schedule. They didn't just schedule up in classification. They played the big dog. I mean, Cabot, Harbor, Benton. They played a semifinal, a 2A semifinalist Woodlawn team to a 1-0 game. I mean, they played Conway. They played a lot of upper class competition that was also extremely quality. A lot of our ranked teams, and we knew what they had at the plate. I mean, a lot of these kids that we've been talking about have been big hitters, and that's something that we're really in these last three classifications that we talk about. We'll discuss a lot of senior heavy teams, but that's how it was for this Mayflower squad. We think Kylie Branscombe went 2 for 3. Alyssa Hagens went 3 for 3. Tori Barksdale 2 for 4. So they all combined, those 3 at the top of the lineup combined to go 7 for 10. Then also Josie Scott at the bottom of the lineup went 2 for 3. So you had a lot of production just really across the board. But talking about pitching, Ruby Otts, man, what a player. All of our pitchers, actually, all of our MVPs, all of our pitchers, because all of them were pitchers, all the MVPs went the distance. They all pitched complete games. So Ruby was 7 innings, 7 hits, 1 earned run, walked 1, and then also struck out 6. So that's a name, Jared, I know that you have talked about, had told me a lot about off air, just her continued development, how she continues to get even better. And I think that really, I know, unfortunately, the state might not have gotten to see it, at the level that we would have liked, but she definitely made her presence felt, and, very deserving of this MVP award, and just a complete performance against a Mayflower team that I think definitely just about everybody by midseason probably expected to be hoisting the gold trophy.
Ruby Otts is just a tremendous ball player. And I've watched her development over probably a 5-year stretch now, from the first times I remember watching her pitch and travel ball to where she is now. the growth and the ability that she has just shown this year and what she's done in high school ball. I saw it last summer, and I told some people last summer, or really into last fall, in travel ball, I said, I will be amazed if she doesn't win a state championship next year in high school. And a couple of the guys that I was talking to at that time, we were at a tournament at Kimry Park in Hot Springs. They were like, well, they're going to be good, but I don't know if they're going to win the thing. And I said, if Ruby continues to throw the way that she's throwing and continues to get better in that direction, I said, they're going to be really, really hard to beat. I said, they're just not going to be teams that are going to put up runs against them to have a chance to beat them. And that's exactly how that came out. So that's one time I'm gonna talk to those two guys here real soon, because we got a tournament coming up and they'll be there. And I'm going to ask them if they remember that conversation. So Ruby is a very special young lady, very special player, talented, extremely talented. But to watch where she went, where she has progressed to, because I'm going to be honest with you, and Ruby will probably smack me upside the head for this, but 3 or 4 years ago, Ruby to me was a good pitcher, but very common. And she had decent velocity and decent movement, but nothing that was just overpowering about either. And she would get a lot of outs with the weak contacts and stuff. But she has progressed as a pitcher so much. Her spin has become amazing. And that's just work. That's putting in the work, working on your spins, working on your pitches. And every year from that 3 or 4 years ago, she was always a good pitcher, but I feel like she pushed herself into being a great pitcher. She worked hard. She dug deep. She worked on the spins and the things that she needed to do. And she really progressed to being a really outstanding, amazing young lady, amazing pitcher. She just is really good at throwing the ball where the bat isn't. And even when you can get a piece of it, it's going to be a weak contact almost every time. And so very impressed with her. Mayflower's hitters, some outstanding hitters in that group. Alyssa Hagens has just hammered the ball all year long this year. Kylie Branscom has hit the ball well. Tori Barksdale's hit the ball well. Just all the way up and down the board. They did a really great job of hitting the ball. And their schedule, like you mentioned earlier, they had hands down, in my opinion, the toughest schedule in the entire state, unless maybe you're talking about Bentonville by going out of state to play Melissa and Calvary Baptist and some of them. But across the board, the most great teams, I believe Mayflower had the toughest schedule in the state this year. And they helped prepare themselves to go right through into this state championship and be there not only to get there, but to win it.
No, I agree with you. I think certainly the small class, 1 through 3A, without question, the toughest schedule. And then you compare it to, like you said, you got to think about the Bentonvilles in there and maybe Harbor, Benton, but top 5, that's an extremely strong argument. And maybe even top 3. You might have something going there. That was a loaded and look, they didn't have a chump schedule in 3A either. They played in a tough conference. They played in a tough region. They had to beat DeWitt, that was number 1 for a while. That was a great team this year. So you've got a great point. It's hard to argue, but Class 2A, Jared, we've talked all year, and we went at length about 3 weeks ago, just about how right before the state tournament, we talked about just the amount of talent, particularly in the circle, that we have in 2A. And once again, we had a pitcher's duel. Now, last year, the Mansfield and Riverside finish, it was kind of a pit. There was probably a little bit more walks than we expected from Claire and also Allison Edwards in that game in 24. But man, this was one of the everybody knows how much I love pitchers duels, but also in these type games, you hate to see someone lose, because man, both Claire Womack and Mackenzie Freeman, they pitched their tails off. They both had an incredible performance, but that was the thing. This one, it comes down to one swing. Every strike matters. Every play matters. Every swing. And that's how it was in this case. In the top of the 6th inning, Annalie Qualls, one of the incredible senior players that's played a lot of innings for this Riverside team, she hit one over the center field wall, and that was all Riverside needed. But other than that, I mean, because Claire won the MVP, of course, 7 innings, 3 hits, walked 3, struck out 12. But I mean, Mackenzie matched her. 7 innings, 2 hits, 1 earned run, that home run to Anna Lee, walked 2 and struck out 10. And just that's really all you can say. But this was a pitcher's game. And Claire looks like the Claire Womack of old that we have seen. I mean, she was her sophomore year. I don't think people quite understand how much pressure there is when you do what she did and you were as dominant as you were, and to have to play 2 more years of high school. Man, like, and she she embraced it. And I'll tell you, like, Coach Jones is getting a steal at Tech, and I don't. And please, nobody take this in the wrong way. I mean, Claire to me is at least a low D1 pitcher at the very most. And I say, please don't take it wrong, because I'm not saying that there's anything like there's a lot of great teams in 2A. I'm saying that more as a compliment to Tech and Coach Jones that they were able to get her in. Because I mean, I think that if I don't really know. I didn't dig extremely deep into her recruiting, but to get that kind of arm at the D2 level. I mean, Jared, that's huge. And what a phenomenal career she had. What a phenomenal career Kenzie had, going to go on and play at the University of Tulsa. Can't tip my hat enough to both of these girls. They pitched so incredibly well, and each of them kept their team in the game throughout.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you that both of these young ladies are outstanding pitchers. And it was both threw the ball extremely well in this state championship game. They both were just lights out. It came down to the difference was the home run. How many times have we seen Annalie Qualls' home run be the difference in a game?
or something from Annalie, whether it's a base hit or some sort
hit
of
or a home run, or I mean, she has been a difference maker too for Riverside. But the thing that I'll say about it is Claire has been just really impressive for a while now. And talking about you mentioned the recruiting side. I'll tell you, that's such a huge part of this that people don't understand is you can be one of the most talented kids in the state of Arkansas or in any state. If you don't have somebody in your corner that is helping you understand the recruiting process and talking to colleges for you, or an organization that has a recruiting director that knows what they're doing, or things like that, I'm going to tell you, there's several kids a year that are really, really outstanding talents that are not getting the looks or getting the looks at the level that they should be because they don't have somebody that does that. And I've been doing this for a while now, and I do a lot of recruiting for our organization, and I do a lot of talking to coaches for kids that aren't even in our organization. And that's not what this is about, but you need to understand that if you have a kid that's going to play at a high level, they need to have somebody that knows the game, that knows the recruiting process, that's going to be in your corner and make those connections and have those conversations. And I'll have to give props to an individual person that I know had a big part in Claire's, and I'm not trying to promote anybody over anybody else, but Maylee Corbett helped make a couple of connections there for Claire when she wasn't being recruited the way that she should have been. She helped make a couple of connections that really made the difference in Claire getting recruited. So definitely a big deal there. And Claire's a great young lady. Mackenzie Freeman's a great young lady, and both tremendously talented. It was a great ball game. They both pitched their tails off, and one big hit was the difference in a ball game there. So I would say that I would love to see more games like this where pitchers just come in and they're dealing, and they put the pressure on batters like you wouldn't believe. When you come in and you throw as well as these two pitchers threw, it puts so much pressure on hitters, and those games are so intense, looking for that one hit to come through, the thing that makes the difference in a ball game. I mean, it's like you can cut it with a knife in the air, the intensity. And I love watching ball games like this. You're always on the edge of your seat, the edge of your seat, just waiting to see what's going to happen next and who's going to get a hit and when it's going to make a difference. So props to both the pitchers, and huge props to Annalie Qualls on coming up with that hit that they needed to make the difference in the ball game.
Yeah, I had a chance to. Of course, this one started late because of the rain, and then I had a chance to go watch this at Shock Stadium, and then I strolled over to the other side of campus, where that was looking at watching baseball, was kind of just doing a bunch of different things, and then ended up calling the 6A game. So I mean, I did get a chance to see this one live, and it was great. One thing I really thought was cool because these are two very successful senior classes. Both, of course, you think about Riverside going to 3 straight state finals, winning 2 of them. Hackett, they've been to a lot of the Lily Oxford, and then McKenzie, and of course Michael and Mikey, Kenzie's little sister, that's going to come back for her senior year next year. All 3 of those, and maybe 1 or 2 others, have had a lot of success. They got a ring in both volleyball and softball, plus some other runner-up finishes. But one thing I really thought was really mature was Mikey Freeman after the final out was recorded. I mean, obviously the seniors. I mean, I've been there too. It's really hard. The seniors are pretty beat up, and it's their last game. And I saw her go to just about every single one and pick them up, and that was really mature. In the midst of your own hurt, you're taking care of your teammates. I thought that was really cool to see. So yeah, just a great performance by both teams. And again, it was a pitcher's game, but you saw a lot of battling, a lot of patient at bats, just continuing to battle. And but these are the teams that we kind of felt like would probably be standing. I know Riverside had that slide a little bit right at the very beginning. I say a slide because it was at the very beginning of the season when they were trying to really just get warmed up to softball coming in from basketball. But not shocked that these were the 2 teams that ended up in this position. So last but not least, in Class 1A, Jared, it looked like we were going to have a pretty competitive game there for the first few innings. And then when Taylor got a couple of, I think Ayla got on in the 3rd, and maybe they had 1 other base runner, but Lakin Cornett, she was dealing. I mean, she was pitching a really good game, and really her and Ayla were going toe to toe. And I think, Taylor had to make some adjustments just because neither was able to really get much on the ball. And once Taylor got a couple of base runners, I'm like, oh boy, I think they're really about to put their foot on the gas now. And then they came out and they put up a 6 spot in the 4th inning. So that was what we had mentioned was the key to the game, was the lights, not just Concord. Any team that's played Taylor in this state championship game over the past few years in particular, just because they're so used to being in this spot, whether it was the girls currently on the team or just them growing up and watching the other teams before them, it's just state championship Taylor is just a whole other animal. And that's why they are the 8-time defending state champions. Now, baseball won their 4th straight, so congratulations to them. Kevin and I will break down that game. But MVP performance from Alis, her 4th consecutive. I don't know how many times that's been done, but she gave up 0 hits, walked 1, 14 strikeouts, went 3 for 5 at the plate, 3 RBI. Her little sister Adley had to outdo her at the plate, though. 4 for 5, scored a run. Ashlyn Clark and Macy Downs also logged multiple hits. But, yeah, that's one thing I kind of thought about. I was watching this one from home, and when I looked through the box score and saw Adley had 1 more hit than Ayla, I'm sure that's probably one thing she's going to give her a little bit of grief for the rest of her life.
Well, the Buford sisters definitely came up big in this one. Ayla was just unreal, and Adley hit the ball so well, definitely. And then Clark and Downs, and I'll tell you, the 2 players that I was really impressed with that don't get mentioned as much, Hamlin and Nolte. They don't get talked about as much. They're kind of the unsung heroes a little bit of this team. But both of those players, what I got to see of them in their regional games and their earlier part of the state tournament and going into this, those 2 are some of those great support players that, you don't always talk about them so much as being superstars because they're hitting home runs or pitching, lights out, but just going to the plate, quality at bats, defensively being just rock solid and not making mistakes. I was really, really impressed with Kendall Hamlin and Aniston Nolte. Those 2 were watching them, and I watched multiple Taylor games on Game Changer this year and then watched the state championship. I was impressed with both of those players. And Downs has always been a good player. Clark, And Ayla, I'll tell you, Ayla has been lights out and been,
she's one of the best players we ever had come through Arkansas, regardless of class.
One of the best players individually that's ever come through the state of Arkansas for sure. And then, of course, you got to mention that little sister freshman Adley Buford. This year just came in as a freshman and she hasn't played a lot of softball. She's definitely more known for basketball, but she really went to work at the plate and she got better all year long. And she came up with a 4 for 5 performance in the state championship. You can't really ask for more out of a freshman.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, the thing that struck me, and I got to actually watch every bit of this game. I was super impressed with Lakin Cornett for the first three and 2/3 innings, and even after that too. But she was really dealing. She was throwing the ball. Her rise ball was outstanding.
Yeah.
And Taylor was chasing it, and she was getting outs early. She was mowing them down. And you could tell Taylor was a little bit of a loss on what to do with it for 3 or 4 innings. And I think it was in the 4th inning with 2 outs before Taylor really broke it open. She had gotten the first 2 outs in the 4th inning, and I think Taylor maybe had 1 runner on. And then that's when Taylor came up with a hit and maybe another walk and then a couple more hits. But that's when they broke it open and put that 6th spot up. But until then, Cornett was outstanding. And
yeah, she looked good.
She looked really, really good. And, there was a couple of errors in there that I think kind of caused a little bit more of, there were some extra runs that scored that shouldn't have. But Cornett, I could tell she almost like she lost a little bit after she got to that point. But I'm going to tell you, her first 4 innings, I was super, super impressed with her. And she's an outstanding little pitcher that I have not, known as much about this year. And, I'm looking forward to seeing what she does as a pitcher in the state.
Yeah, I'll tell you, and I've mentioned it on a few episodes, this was the team that we both probably didn't give enough credit to. And again, we knew that they lost a good bit, so I think that was maybe reasonable at the time. But, man, the last few years, especially in that 1A2 conference, the conversations have kind of been Hunter Hutto, that's, a lot of them weren't. They graduated in 24, but like Hunter Hutto from Shirley, Haley Krotz from Viola, those were kind of the ones that we had talked about, good. And then you'd go all the way back a few years ago to McKenna Biddle, even then, like those are kind of the ones that we've talked about in that 1A2 conference over the past few years. But I mean, Lakin's always been a good one, but I feel like she took, a step or 2 forward this, especially with how big that she was for this team, like multiple double-digit strikeout games, just how key she was. And there was plenty, that did a lot of good things with their bat too. But you talk about Hamlin, I thought that she did because that was another situation where Ayla has been used to Madison Lindsay all these, which, by the way, I saw Madison Lindsay on TV sitting on a bucket. I guess she's helping. She had a notepad sitting on a bucket, so I guess she's helping coach. That's really cool. I mean, definitely good to have those Lindsay roots in your program with how successful Madison was in softball and then her brothers were in baseball. But yeah, Hamlin, I think, has done a great job this year. Callie McHenry there in the bottom of the lineup, she knocked a hit, and I think that she's done a good job as well. But yeah, Adley Buford is she's going to be. I can't remember if she plays volleyball too or not, but yeah, basketball and softball, she is definitely going to be one to keep an eye on over the next 3 years.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Callie McHenry has been really solid, especially in the run through the postseason. And you get started talking about the kids that more and things like that. But very, very impressed with Callie McHenry and Hamlin coming in and behind the plate doing such a great job. And Madison Lindsay being on the bucket doesn't surprise me because that's just something that's in their blood in Taylor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You are hooked in. You are 100% invested in Taylor athletics if you're from Taylor. You're going to be a part of it. You're going to follow them. You're going to be involved. You're going to be down there at the ballpark. And the alums, I noticed there were some derogatory comments on Facebook after the state championship. Well, boy, they about got run out of town by all the Taylor alum that got on there and was like, "What? You don't have any idea what you're talking about." It was. I'll tell you, I was extremely impressed with Taylor. I was impressed with Cornette and what Concord did this year, and she's a really special talent, and I absolutely see why Concord was as successful as they were this year with the way she threw the ball early in that game. To touch briefly on Ayla, we've talked tons and tons and tons about Ayla Buford. Something that needs to be mentioned, and she's been recognized, she's been talked about. I saw a little tidbit earlier today, and I don't have it in front of me, but in her 4 years of state tournaments, she has thrown 10 shutouts in state tournaments. And so you're looking at, let's see, 16 total games in state tournaments over the last 4 years. She's thrown 10 shutouts. Ayla Buford is a special kid with a lot of talent. But I'm going to tell you, she flips a switch when it comes to tournament time and you get to state tournament, that she just goes into a whole nother level of talented and a whole nother level of determination. And, she's not really known as a huge strikeout pitcher. She's a weak contact pitcher more so than a strikeout pitcher. But that just shows you where she flips that switch. And she goes into this game against a really good Concord team and records 14 strikeouts. She was dealing. She was determined. She was not going to be denied for her 4th state championship.
No.
She had a mindset that she was going to go finish writing her legacy. She was not going to take, she just wasn't, kind of like we talked about with Emery Bolin at Pea Ridge. She wasn't going to be denied. You were going to have a hard time getting over on Ayla Buford for this state championship. Once she got there, it was going to be. No doubt about it. And
just turns it on.
Hats off to Scranton and Westside that they gave Taylor great ball games in the 2 rounds prior to that, because they did. They gave Taylor everything they wanted. And I definitely feel like the state championship was played in the semifinal game more than the final game. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Concord because they were a really good team and Cornette was a really good pitcher. But Scranton gave Taylor everything they wanted and played a really complete ball game. So they deserve a little bit of recognition for playing such a great game there.
Yeah, both Westside and Scranton, man, those were both incredible games. But I don't know if I actually said the final score in that game in between Taylor and Concord, 12-0. Taylor put the 6th spot up in the 4th, and then 2 more in the 6th, and finished it out with 4 in the 7th. So, well, we got one more episode. We will be releasing our rankings. Now, I don't know when the show will actually be, but we'll have one more pod. I will say my not my goodbyes, my goodbyes to the podcast and some things, but I want to make sure that I remind, like, I'm not going. It's not like I'm going to sign off next week and I'm never going to be around. I'm going to do what I can to help Jared continue this stuff and everything that we can to keep giving these girls the coverage they deserve. But we'll talk about that. We'll release our rankings and then we'll give a breakdown of each class, just kind of like what went into it, why this. Some of them are obviously going to be opposite. Now, people that have seen in past years, the state champion obviously finishes number 1. Now, I have no idea how, because I haven't even looked at it yet, but it isn't always just because if you're runner up, you're number 2. Like, we've had some cases before. Like, for instance, I think it was last year, Scranton actually finished number 3 in 1A because they got, I know it was, a pretty big deficit, but they got, I can't remember if it was a run rule game in the state final or not, but yet Shirley held Taylor to a 1-0 game. So that's kind of stuff in the semifinals. So that's something else that we take into consideration. So it's not just like, oh, well, if you made the state, you're 1-2 guaranteed. And we're going to kind of, really just look at the strength of schedules, also look at what each team did in the state tournament play. And that's kind of the whole point of doing this breakdown show. We didn't do that last year. And I think that that's one thing that we're going to do just to kind of finish it out, or it is something we're going to do to finish it out. But that was the reason for that, just to kind of give a little breakdown of why each team is where. So that'll do it for this week. It's crazy how fast it all went by, but congratulations to all the state champions, all of the teams that made it there. But more than that too, just congratulations on anybody that had the season that there's plenty, just because there were teams that didn't win state championships. Only one did, obviously, in each classification. That doesn't mean that other goals weren't met. I mean, Jared, look at what you guys did at Cutter. You made history and won the most games in school history, won a district championship, won a conference championship. There's a lot more than just state championships. It's a lot more than just state tournaments. There were a lot of teams that did a lot of good things. So don't want to take anything away from that. So yeah, Jared, it was a lot of fun. But it's crazy to think that we're going to be closing out year 4 next week.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's going to be a little different. Hard to believe we're finishing up the season, and things are definitely going to be shifting and changing a little bit. We'll have to have you back, next year for a couple of guest spots or something.
Oh yeah, I'll be following. I'll still be keeping up with everything heavily.
We'll pull you over for state championship week at least, and get you going. We're gonna work on getting things set up and rolling again for next year. And I've got some ideals for some really big stuff to help continue to grow the game and to push names out there for players and to try to continue to do what we've been working towards doing for 4 years now, and that's trying to help give these kids, these young ladies, the exposure that they need to have, and that they get the recognition that they deserve, and just continue to grow the game of softball in Arkansas. It has exploded in the last 5-6 years, and it's just continuing to grow. I get messages all the time, and I know you do too. People thanking us for what we're doing to help get recognition for players and things like that. We don't want to see that quit. We're going to continue that. We're going to find a way to keep pushing forward and continue to grow this game for these young ladies that so very much deserve it.
That's exactly right. That's what this has all been about. And that's one thing I definitely want to make sure I hit on next week, is kind of give my sincere thoughts on the amount of support, because I always go back to when all the stuff happened last spring, and the spring of 24, and the guys here at Natural State Sports were so gracious to bring us on so we could finish the season out. The support that we had from parents, coaches, players, even had a few players reach out to me directly. I tried, especially the seniors that we hard, like the team, obviously the teams that, have done a lot over the past few years. You kind of, you cover certain kids a little bit more closer, or whatever the case may be. I try to reach out to them and tell them how proud of them I am, not just for what they've done on the field, but what they've done off of it too. And so it's been good to interact with some of them, and some of the things that they have said have meant a whole lot. So yeah, it's really good. And we'll talk a little bit more about that next week and get into all the little sappy stuff, if you will. So, well, that'll do it for episode 78. Again, thank you all for the support. Thanks for listening. Congratulations again to everyone on a great season. We will see you next week when we finish up the season and also talk about our final Super 7 rankings. For Jared Hawthorn and all of us here, I'm Kyle Sutherland. We'll see you next week.